return to recording. So, so anyway, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Fine Arts Film Festival 2021. This is our first Q&A interview we're doing. The film is Jasmine Road, and it is a pretty incredible film that I've watched several times because it has an incredible relevance in a lot of different ways about love and about loss, about family, and about having connections with each other over long distances and close to home as well. So we have Warren. Warren, please help me pronounce your last name. I'm so sorry, I forgot to ask first.
Yeah,
Warren
Solatiki.
Solatiki. Okay, fantastic. And then we have, who's the director and the writer and producer of the movie. Then we have Aisha Kay, who plays Layla in the movie. Then we have Greg Elwand, who plays Mac in the movie, Gentleman with the Hat. And then we have Sawad Bushnak, I believe. Sawad Bushnak did the composition from the movie. Sawad is from Jordan. Aisha is from Saudi Arabia and has an amazing podcast with her sister, who's also an actress and quite famous in her home country. Greg is calling in from Toronto, and his wife, the actress playing Belle, is his wife in Jasmine Road and his wife in real life, and he's set to do an audition that we can't really talk about right now with a major director, so he's pretty excited about that. Hi, Christy. Christy's our programming director. She's in the audience. So Warren, well, first of all, this film is about, Islamophobia in some ways. It's about fear of foreigners, xenophobia in general, and but also learning to understand that we're all really the same. And one of the things that happened in Canada this week was the devastating loss of the most of the Afzal Salman family in London, Ontario, Canada, and it really hit home. It happened on Sunday, and it hit home because I didn't find out about it till this morning, and I was so shocked that it could happen in Canada. But my friend from Canada who told me about it, Jim Kwan, he said, there's people like this everywhere, and that's really what I want to sort of commemorate this show for that family, but also to people everywhere who are persecuted for their religion or their beliefs or anything like that. And I want to just say that this Jasmine Road film is an incredible statement about the power of family and love and about the power of how our cultures can bring us together. So with that, I'd like to discuss, I'd like to talk with Warren first, and I'd like to say, Warren, you made an incredible film with all of your team. And I was very touched by it. It touched on some things that I've been going through in the last week or so that really were personal for me. And I'm wondering how you sort of began the process of making the movie. Is there something in your personal life that you brought into the, I'm assuming there's personal things, but the script is very broad. It's also allowed itself to be contemplative over a period of time in the movie. The length of the movie and the length of the time we spend with the characters is really important to the project. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about the film and how this came to be in a way.
Thank you. Really, the genesis of the film came from my response to what was happening around the world and within Canada and south of the border at the time in 2016. when I really started doing the research and early draft writing of the film. And I had a chance to do another feature after my first feature with funding. And I thought, given this voice I have, or that I've been given as a filmmaker, I really wanted to use that opportunity to use art as activism and for social cause and raising awareness of what at that time and is now such a world issue beyond the pandemic, which is race, systemic racism and hatred of others. Sorry. And, we've just experienced evidence of that again in Canada, and there's evidence of it always around the world, and it's not something that is easily expunged. But I believe that love conquers hatred, and that's the message in the film, and the creation of the characters are based on that foundational belief. So it really came from a deep concern for what was and is happening worldwide.
And one of the things that really resonated with me in the writing and the directing is the way that you were, and I happen to be a director myself and a producer as well. And so I admired a great deal about how you were able to capture what you wrote, but in a way that didn't require it didn't ever feel like I was hearing written words. It always felt like this process was happening from the characters themselves, which is obviously ultimately the goal. So I'm wondering, what was the interaction with the characters themselves, the actors themselves, when it came to working on the script, getting it where you wanted it to be, getting the words to come alive on screen. How did that process, working with the actors, help the process of the film?
I'll talk briefly, but then throw it over to Aisha and Greg. The characters were based on the Western side, the Western culture side, on characters that I knew from my upbringing. I worked as a cowboy in early adult years in the Banff Kananaskis region in Alberta. And so Mac and Bell and others in the story are composites of people I know. On the Arabic side of the storytelling, that was based on a lot of research I did in meeting with people from refugee communities in Canada, in Toronto, in Calgary. But then, so creating the characters, but then the incredible talent of Aisha and Greg and the others really brought those words and flesh and blood that was on page to life. And, I throw it to them to talk about the experience of how they did that.
Great. So that's what we'll do next. Before we run to that, I realized that I need to be playing the trailer of the movie so everybody can see that first. And then we'll come back to Aisha and Greg, because there's another clip I'd like to play. Well, both the clips relate to them. And then, so let me share my screen, and we might have a little brief moment where the transfer takes place, but I'm going to share my screen, and then it should be able to play. And can you guys see this trailer now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so it should play.
To build a wall right up along our goddamn border. And that's what this country has to do as well. You can't even send them back. They say they're persecuted.
أهلا وسهلا. I invited some people out this weekend. Thought it would be nice for them to see the country. They're new.
Shimmering arrows here. You can't expect me just to open up to just anybody.
حبيتي العيشة هون؟
إيه حبيت هذا البيت.
I made sambuza, Arabic ice cream from Aleppo.
I see you're reading a book on magic.
قبل شو ما تسلم صلي. Sometimes I think just praying isn't enough. So I'm looking for the right magic formulas to change things.
This man fighting other men who did this to my family. I have so much hate in my heart. I don't know what to do with it. It was a very good life. The kind that only family can make.
So as you can tell from the trailer, it's quite a strong film and very emotional just even watching that. And as you can tell, the music is key in a great deal of the connecting tissues with the movie. So we're going to be talking about that with Sawad in a minute. But before we do, I'd like to introduce Aisha Kay again, who plays Layla in the movie, and Greg Elwand, who plays Mac. And there is a scene, I'm going to play a scene, Aisha's first scene as Layla in the movie, and then we'll come back. Actually, I'm going to play the one with Greg and Aisha in it because that scene is an incredible ensemble in it, and they all are. But I'm going to go ahead and play Greg's scene first, and you'll see why in just a second. So let me just share this. Okay, so where is it? Come on now. Okay, I know you can do it. There you go. Computers. Yes, we love them. Okay, and here we go.
Matt,
Yes?
do you need help?
Oh boy. How on earth do you possibly think you can help me?
I just thought that maybe you need help with all the work you've been doing today.
Well, you thought wrong.
Loretta had mentioned that perhaps you could take us into the city today to pick up a few things.
Well, I'm not up to it today. Why the hell would you move out all the way out here? If you don't have a driver's license, you don't even have a car.
I don't have a driver's license, not here in Canada. In Syria, I drove everywhere.
They let women drive in your country?
Yes, they let women drive. In my country, women drive. We do lots of things that you're probably not aware of. You know, I was actually a journalist. I was respected. I was a very good writer for a big newspaper. Do you think anybody here would hire me for what I was trying to do? Nobody here cared to hire a Syrian journalist who only has Syrian clippings in her portfolio. Believe me, I have tried. But I will change that. I will write, I will cook, I will clean, I will do whatever I have to do. I'll make bloody ice cream if I have to.
You were a writer.
I won very many awards for my writing, but I have been told that it is difficult already for Canadian writers who are born here to find work.
Well, you were told right. because it doesn't really matter if you live here, if you're born here. It's hard to find a good, steady job. You know what I did for 25 years to keep this ranch going? I drove a truck. I hauled gas from the city all the way down to the local stations and some of the small farms around here. And then, you know, the economy tanked, the stations closed, the farms closed as well. And the few trucking jobs that are left, who do you think gets them? Young guys, kids, young foreign guys. They've been here for a year or two and they get the jobs, not me. Nobody cares about an old shit, pardon the language, like me.
So one thing that really impresses me with that particular scene is the way that each character is listening so closely to each other, which is what we all want, but also just how they're each other's countenance and emotions are reflected in each other. So I'm wondering, how was it to work with each other? What was that like, and how did it feel in the moment? I would assume that the atmosphere in which you were working was a great motivator as well.
Yeah, I would, you know, the atmosphere and the people that we had on the set was really quite extraordinary. I mean, from Warren, or actually I could actually say from his dad, who was the executive producer, all the way down, he had an extraordinary group of people, and it made it a very collegial place to come to work every day. And how I did it, I sort of would like to say I don't really know, because every project that I begin, you know, an actor's got to face the music. They've got to try to make it, they've got to wear the shoes. They've got to make it sound like them, look like them. You've got to be comfortable. You know, I was doing that blacksmithing at the beginning of the movie, and I put that blacksmithing leather on about 150 times just so that it would look as if I had done it 1,000 times. So I looked comfortable putting that on. And you know, you've got to say the words to yourself out. You got to say the words out loud forever and a day. You've got to practice. Every night I'd go home and I'd practice and I'd study the script and I'd write my little parallel story, everything that I was thinking at every moment, so that eventually I could go in and let it go and just be the character. And I'm like that you said that it was about listening, because basically that's what acting is. It's not really what you do so much as how much you listen. I remember I taught this class to high school kids, and I used a clip from a film that I had been in, and I showed them how many times the camera cut to a character who was just listening. That's all it is. It's just, you just listen. You listen and react. It's kind of simple, but it's not really. But working with everybody was extraordinary. You know, it was an extraordinary summer, 2019. It's going to be hard to top that one. Oh,
Aisha, there's the moment in the scene where he says, "Why do you come here? And, you know, did you even drive? Why do you not have a license?" And the way the editing worked, where you can see the visible change in your behavior. You can see the immediate change in your countenance, in which you are changing from listening, sort of trying to empathize, but then at the moment you have to assert yourself. And you suddenly have to switch to the assertion of your power, you know, that your strength and your confidence, and in a situation where it's not easy because you are a guest, you know. So that really impressed me in terms of the entire way that was put together. But it comes down to your performance to be there. So what was that like? Have you ever worked in an environment like this before? And How did that feel?
I just have to say how beautiful it is for the film to be seen with someone that is so artistically sensitive like you. I appreciate how like you read everything. I'm just like, my heart is full, so thank you. I think what has worked about this film, it was my first time to work on a feature film, to have a lead role, and I have Warren to thank for trusting me, to hiring me for this role. He has a also equally artistic approach to things where, because acting at the end is like peeling all of that performative self that we have and just going back to the core of what makes us who we are. And Warren's approach has been about bringing people who are authentically from a certain context. So I'm Arab, and he's worked a lot to ensure that on set we are allowed to dress the way that we like and the way that we feel comfortable with, to do our hair the way that we, his many asked. And you mentioned the podcast, and I was talking to my sister about even with the intimate scene that there was, he's made sure that culturally whatever I did was in accordance and in respect of my culture. So I think being in that safe space, as a starting artist, actor, it allows me to really just to explore further. And then the cast there was very in harmony. So like with Greg, he plays music. So he was singing for us and playing music outside the set, and we'd sing together. Me that have no background. Ahmed, who plays my brother, is also like, it's just everybody was bringing their own self into there. And there was much of the story outside. Like even my daughter Hiba, who's Melody Mukhtari, that's her name. We lived together. So before we went on set for the first week, Warren just let us sit in an accommodation together, sharing everyday breakfast, hanging out close to dry. And her grandmother is her chaperone. So we got to learn she's Persian, so got to learn a little bit about her culture, So there was a lot of things where you just put the right ingredients, and for Warren watching it play together and see how it happens.
Well, fantastic. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play your clip. And then once I'm done with that, I would like to, well, I'm not quite sure which question I'm going to ask. I have several, but just a moment. Let's play your clip as Layla.
Yeah.
Remind me so much of my father. I think you would have liked my father. You will like place too. My father, they get along very well. When you miss someone, it leaves a hole, And it's the worst at night.
It's terrible.
But in the morning, imagine that Qais and I are back home in our house in Aleppo. Or in the store. My father was very famous for his ice cream. Qais and I would help my father if I was not working myself and we had time. We used to say that it ran on love, and that is all it needed. And good ice cream, good coffee. It was very good life. Jannah, heaven, the kind that only family can make. How could something so beautiful, something that brought joy every single day, be destroyed? Be destroyed by men who don't even care. And I'm sorry to say, but it is men fighting other men who did this to my family. Aleppo is one of the oldest cities in the history. It is jewel.
And now it is all rocks and smoke. I have so much hate. I have so much hate in my heart. I don't know what to do with it.
So, so that's going to lead us to the next question. I'm just going to let that speak for itself. Wow. So, the music in this, I mean, Melody Mohtari, who plays Heba, is amazing in this movie. Amazing, incredible actress. And she's also key to a lot of the musical montage scenes. So what we're going to do now is we're going to introduce Suad Bushnak, who is the composer for the film. And I am just, you know, my personal belief is that music is 70% of a movie. Sound is 70% of a movie. That's just a way that I operate because I'm just always been so taken by it. And what you've done in this movie is you've created this incredible mixture of cultural references, but your score is exceptional and so beautiful. And so I'm wondering how you came to the project and what your preparation was for it and what it was like working with Warren and did you come in like sort of early in the process before the film was began production, or did you come in at a certain point?
So I actually, my agent pitched me on this project months before I came on board. And I remember her reaching out to me again and saying that Warren would love to listen to some of your music and have a chat with you. So we talked. He sent me a cut of the film. It was a locked picture, pretty much. And I watched it and I remember crying my eyes out when it was done, because I am actually half Syrian. My mother is Syrian and I'm a first generation Canadian. So my parents were two pharmacists who came to Canada. They are both bilingual, one of them is trilingual, and yet people would talk to them loudly and slowly as if they were, as if they didn't understand. When I saw like the scene of Aisha explaining how she's a journalist, my mom and dad came to mind. And when she said Aleppo was a jewel, I cried because no one knew what Syria was before the war happened. For me personally, I would say my mom is from Syria. No one even knew what that was until the war happened and people just associated it with war. So when I got the film, and I get a lot of films about Syria, by the way, but I chose this one because it was authentic. It had, the authenticity level was down to the minute details, things that only Arabs and Syrians know, from the ice cream to the way the actors were talking to certain idiosyncrasies about the culture, they were there. So the level of authenticity, the beautiful cinematography, the impeccable acting, and everything about it was so perfect. I sent him a one-page email while crying, saying that thanking him for this masterpiece. The other thing that was really for me interesting is that Warren challenged me. He said, before we start, I want you to compose. He said, I listened to your music, I listened to your score, to your scores, but I don't want you to compose Middle Eastern music for me. I want you to do a deconstructed score that has elements of Middle Eastern, but I want this to be deconstructed. So it's like going to a cook who's famous for his lasagna and telling him to flip it upside down, right? So for me, that was I love challenges. And that for me was a huge challenge. So he asked me if I can whip up something for him. And I remember sitting and like spending an all-nighter, coming up with cues, sending him 4 different cues. He loved them, and that's how I came on board. And as of that point, we were working in the pandemic, by the way, like right at the beginning of the pandemic. And I feel that I couldn't have spent that first lockdown doing anything better than this, because it was a beautiful process of challenging, but also respect, the level of respect between artists. This is something not all films give the crew, unfortunately. So the level of respect for my art, but also the challenge, that balance was really, really inspiring. And regarding Melody Mukhtari, we wanted, Warren had the idea of having vocals and having a theme for her. Because as you said, she's the center of the montages in the film. So we developed a leitmotif for her, a very specific melody for Melody that reappeared several times in the film, depending on what she was doing in different formats and orchestrations, until the key scene towards the end when she sees the horse and her father, and that's where the climax of that score happened.
Wonderful. Well, what I'm going to do now is, okay, so just so everybody knows who's watching, this is a Zoom cast that has a certain time limit. So we have about 5 minutes left in this Zoom, but we're going to continue. So I'm going to ask each of you to relink back up to the same link I sent you before, so we can continue this after, if this thing stops. Sometimes they don't, sometimes they'll let you continue, but I'm going to go ahead and share the screen for the musical montage now. And I'm assuming we can get to it before this thing turns us off. And there's a scene that goes, the beginning of this scene doesn't have as much music, but it sets up the montage, the music in an incredible way.
Hi, Mike. Hi.
Hi, Mark. What is this? Who would do something like that?
I don't know.
Maybe it was wrong of us to come here. I don't want to cause any trouble.
Wait, don't clean it yet.
Why?
Just leave it for now. I'll look after it.
Mac? I made sambuza. Arabic ice cream from Aleppo. I can leave it here if you like. Are you okay?
Yes, fine.